Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be something new here on my channel, and if you haven't seen any of my videos before, I wanted to introduce myself because my name is Alexandra and my channel is mostly about product panning. And if you don't know what product panning is, it is sort of a community within the beauty community that wants to distance themselves from the consumerism of the beauty community, because I feel like I was sort of in a place where I wanted to buy all the new things and I wanted to buy all the new eyeshadow palettes, and then you sort of don't use what you have in your collection and everything is just sitting there and your drawer is getting old. And I feel like I speak for a lot of us when I say this, or I feel like a lot of other in the beauty community might feel the way I do, that you buy a new thing and then you use it a few times and then you just put it in your drawer and then you don't form a solid opinion on it. So this is going to be a new project here on my channel, and it is basically going to be me going through my palettes and forming an opinion on them. So the first palette that I have been working on is the Colourpop All I See Is Magic palette. And the rules for my product, or this product, is that I want to use a palette. I want to use every single shade in one palette at least 3 times, and then I want to sit down and film an update for you guys, or it's basically for me so that I form an opinion on it, and then I want to pick a new palette and try and use all those shades at least 3 times and then film that update. So if you have seen my other videos, you know that I have another product which is called the Pandos eyeshadows, and it's basically where I have all my palettes written down on paper and then I just pull randomly. I currently have 5 eyeshadows that I'm working on. I will leave my intro down below, but in that product my focus is to hit pan in as many eyeshadows as possible, and in this product my my goal is to form an opinion on as many eyeshadows in my collection as possible. So I don't want to necessarily make progress on them, I just want to use them. And I'm going to start the year by sort of having both of these products going at once, but if I feel like I like one or the other more, or if I feel like they don't go together, then I might end one of them, but I'm going to at least try to have them both running at the same time. So yeah, as I've said before, I have been working on the Colourpop All I See Is Magic palette, and I bought this off of the Colourpop website, and I think it's still on the website for $20 or something. This was their holiday release, but when I bought it, it was on sale, so I think I paid $14.80 or something for it. But then of course I pay shipping, or I didn't pay shipping because it was over $50, so the shipping was free. But I also pay customs and stuff, so it's a bit more expensive for me. But you have 15 shades in this palette, so 3 rows of 5, and they each contain, I think it was it doesn't say on the palette, but I think it was a tiny bit more than 1 gram per eyeshadow. So for me the price is like, I paid less than $15 for 15 eyeshadows, which is more, and there is more than 15 grams of this. So for each gram I paid less than $1, and so the price is very good. And when I started using this, I was sort of underwhelmed. I think a lot of the shades I really liked, and then some I didn't, but now that I have used it like every single shade at least 3 times, I feel like it's a very good palette. I started when I started like thinking about what I was going to say in this review, I was sort of thinking of starting this this is not gonna be a review that will like talk you into buying it, or talking the viewer into buying it, because at first I was sort of underwhelmed with it, and I still don't want to talk anyone into buying a palette they don't want to. But if you've been on the fence and you don't know if you want to buy it, I will break down all the shades and go through them, and then you can decide if the shades that draw you, or the shades you felt like compelled by, I don't know, those that drew you into this palette. If they are great, then maybe you should buy it, because as I said, the price per eyeshadow is very, very good. There are some shades that are not as good as the others, so if those were the ones that you felt like you most needed, then maybe you should not buy this palette. But okay, so we are just going to start from the top, and I'm going to have it the right side up. But this is Go Wish, I believe, because that's the name. Yeah, I think it's Go Wish. And this is sort of this is a peachy transition shade, and I will have swatches included as well, so you will see them. But this is called Go Wish, and it's a peachy transition shade. It's a good transition shade. I have it on today, but it's sort of stiff in the pan, so it's not the best transition shade I've ever used. But it's not the worst. It's fine. I mean, it's okay in this palette. The next shade is one of my favorites, which is called Now and Then. It's a pale white base with sort of like a yellowish green reflect to it, which is very, very pretty. And then we have 1111, and this shade is sort of like a coppery, rosy, rose gold eyeshadow. And this one is one of the like not so great eyeshadows in this palette, because this is very powdery, or it's very glittery, and I have it on my lids today, and I don't know if you will be able to tell, but this transfers to like when because I have hooded eyelids, so the glitter transfers up to my upper lid when I like move my eyes. So, and you get a lot of glitter fallout. So if you don't do the base, like I always do my eyes first and then the base, so I don't think I could deal with it, I still use it. But if you do your base first and then your eyes, I think you will have a lot of trouble with this eyeshadow. And then we have Treat Yourself, which is a pale highlighting shade, and this is really pretty. I have it on my inner corner today, and at first I was sort of skeptical towards this shade, because I don't know, I just didn't think it would highlight enough. But I've been using it almost every single day since I started using this palette, and I really, really love it, so it's a great shade. And then we have Top Notch. I'm sure they have that as a single, or am I just imagining things? But this is sort of like a warm toned brown, and this I have had some trouble with this not layering on your eye. So like you would be tempted to go in with this shade first, and then go in with maybe this shade right here, which is a orange, and then go in with this to sort of darken the outer corner and into the crease. But it doesn't layer good, so if I am going to use this shade, I have to put my I use my Painterly paint pot from MAC to put that all over the lid, and then I set that with a eyeshadow that is close to my skin tone, or my exact skin tone, and then I would go in with this one directly into the crease, and then use this shade to blend it out, because I feel like this performs better when that's the first eyeshadow you put on. So I like every other look I would do, I will go in with this first and then a darker shade, but when I use this shade I go in with this first, and then I use like a lighter transition shade to blend it out. And then we have Tinseltown, which is my favorite shade in the entire palette, and what I'm mostly wearing on my eyes today. And this is sort of like a matte cranberry shade, and as you can see, it sort of blends out to almost like a pinkish shade, and I really, really love it. I love the formula. It has, when you put your brush in, it has a lot of kickbacks, so you get like powder flying everywhere. But I prefer that to this shadow, which is sort of stiff and no kickback. I like this better, where you have some sort of like creaminess, and then I'm okay with the kickback as long as it's creamy, as opposed to this shade where it's stiff and no kickback. And then this shade is called Twinkle Toes, and this is also one of my least favorite in the palette, just because I feel like the color is a bit off. It's a sort of greenish golden shade. I mean, it's okay to use. It's definitely, like with this shade, I forgot to mention up here, you probably want to use it wet, because it has so much like fallout, and it doesn't sort of stick to the eye. But this, you don't have to use it. It's highly metallic, and you don't have to use a setting spray or wet your brush when you use this one, because goes on beautifully on the eyes. But the shade is too dark for an everyday like lid shade in my opinion, and it's too light for if you want a darker look. So it's not my favorite, but it performs very well. So if you think you would like this shade, then I think you will like the quality of this eyeshadow. And then we have Something Special, and this is sort of like a purplish cranberry shimmer shade. This is also one of the less good eyeshadows in this palette, because you have to layer something else underneath. So if I'm going to use this, I will put this shade all over my lid, and then I will put this over. I think I will explain some of the looks I have done at the end of this video, and then you will see one where I have put this all over my lid up into my crease, and then I put this one over. And then the next shade we have is Wishful Thinking, which is one of my favorites in this palette. It's sort of like a green duochrome shade, and it's super pretty, and it like goes on super to your eyelid, so you don't have to use a wet brush or anything. You can just put it on. And I have done several looks where I have used like different transition shades, and I love to pair it with this shade, which the one with the green yellow duochrome in it. I think they are stunning together, so I really love this shade. And then we have the shade Pitter Patter, which is a copper like rose, you know, all of those red toned shimmer shades that are very popular. This you have to use a setting, or like you have to wet your brush if you want to use it. I have this underneath this shade on my lid today, and if you just put it on with your brush, it sort of just dusts away, which is very weird. So you have to use a setting spray on your brush when you are using this shade. Otherwise it's a pretty shade, but it's definitely not the best in the palette. And then we have this gold shade, which is called Save It For Later. And as I said, it's a gold. It's a very yellow, like warm tone gold, so I think it's sort of, or it's not a yellow gold, it's a sort of orangey gold, and I would have preferred if it was a more yellow gold than this sort of, I don't know, it kind of looks, on me it doesn't go very well with my skin tone because I'm very cool tone. So yeah, it's not my favorite in the palette. And then we have a Big Spoon, which is more of a, like this is more of a peachy transition, this is more of a pinky transition, and they are very similar in quality. This is also sort of stiff, and it has some sparkles in it, but you can't see those on the eyes. So I think this shade is, I mean, you could have had another, I think this does not really have a place in this palette. You don't need it in this palette, but it's still, it's a good shade. And then you have a Teacup, which is sort of a cool toned, mid-toned grayish brown. And the quality of this is amazing, and yeah, I've enjoyed it a lot. And then we have Imperial, which is your typical orange. I also have this sort of as my crease or transition shade today. But it's very, very orange. So, you have one cool tone in this palette, which is this one. And then you have all these like orangey warm tone shades. So if you want I don't know, I think the first look you do when you're going to this palette is that you put this in as your transition shade, and then you put this in your crease, and then you go in with this like more concentrated in the crease. I think that's the easiest, like that's what you do first with the palette. And I think that this is it's very, very orange, so I mean all your looks turn out sort of orange, but I still like this shade. And then we have the last shade, which is called Never Never, and this is a shimmery, very dark sort of brown. And I would have rather I mean, it's not a bad shade. It's sort of like this one, you sort of want to layer something else underneath, and then you put this over just so that it looks more, I mean, it has the shimmer, it doesn't necessarily have the pigment, if you know what I mean. So I would layer something else underneath. And it's not a bad shade. I just wish that this was matte, because this is not dark enough and this is not dark enough. Like, this is what I have like on my outer corner and everything today, and this is not a very dark look. And I would have loved to see if this was a dark matte brown instead of this like shimmer brown. Okay, so that I talked a lot. But that was a breakdown of all the shades in this palette, and as I said, most of them are very good quality. Some of them you have to wet your brush, like with this shade and this shade, and for these two you have to use something else underneath to get them to perform like you want them to. And I would have preferred if this was a dark brown instead of a shimmery, like just a matte dark brown. And I think this is sort of, I don't see the place of this shadow in this palette. But otherwise, as I said, I think it's a very good palette, and I think it's well worth like the $15 I paid for it. And then I also wanted to include some of the eyeshadow looks that I have done with this palette, just so you can see sort of the variety I have been able to get out of this palette. And the first look was the first look I did with this palette, and I used entirely eyeshadows from this palette. And I have, as I said, I have Go Wish, Big Spoon and Top Notch in my crease. And then I also have Tinseltown on my outer corner, and then on my lid I have 1111. And then for the next look I wanted to experiment with the shade Something Special in the middle of the palette. And so here I have put Tinseltown all over my lid and blended it out into the crease with the shade Go Wish. And then I put Something Special all over the lid. And I think this look is very pretty, and I would totally do it again. And then I just have one look where I used Tinseltown like in my outer corner, and then I used like Go Wish, I think, in my crease. And I also used some of Teacup, which is the cool tone in the bottom of the palette. And then I just used a lilac from another palette on my eyelid. And then I have this look where I used Go Wish in as my transition, and then I used Big Spoon in my crease and also Top Notch. And then I used Wishful Thinking on all over my eyelid and Now and Then as my inner corner highlight. And I think that look turned out very pretty. And then we have one look where I used the shade Never Never, the gold look, and then eyeshadow, and then I topped it off with a bit of 1111 just to like tone down that very gold look. And then I have one look where I used a lot of other shades, so I used a few from my Sleek Makeup Ultra Matte version 1 in the crease, and then I used a bit of the VCR Dark Matte palette in like the blue shade in the crease. But then I used Wishful Thinking all over the lid, and then at the center I have Now and Then, which is the yellow duochrome shade. And then the last look that I have is this here. And here I think I have the transition shade from the Dream Street palette, also by Colourpop, in my crease. But then I just wanted to show you on the lid I have the shade Twinkle Toes, which was the one that I think is sort of, I don't know, it's sort of like an awkward shade. And I think I have layered something else on top here because I wanted to lighten it up a bit. But basically this is the tone you get when you use that eyeshadow. Okay, so that was everything for that palette, or I hope everything I wanted to tell you about this palette came across. Like, I think it's a good palette for the price, and I think some of the shades are like really good, even when you compare to other eyeshadows. But then there are some that are not as good, and some you have to work with a bit to get them to perform as maybe other more expensive eyeshadow. But I think overall it's a good palette, and I would definitely recommend it if you are looking for those types of shades, and I don't think you will be disappointed if you are willing to work with it. I think it's not a palette that I would not give this to my mother, for example, which does not have the same experience that I have with eyeshadows. She would not be, I don't think she will be able to make like this, yeah, like Something Special, Tinseltown, 1111, I don't think, or this one, I don't think she will be able to make those work because yeah, she does not have the experience. But since I know I can, and I like those shadows for what I can do with them, but it's not a beginner palette, what is what I want to get across, but it's still a pretty good palette. So that was the first palette for this product, and I have decided that I want to like intro the next palette I'm going to be working with in these videos. And the next one I'm going to focus in on is the Dream Street palette, which is the Kathleen Light's Colourpop collaboration, which looks like this. And this has 12 shades, so it's a bit smaller than the All I See's Magic palette, and this is what it looks like. And if you've seen my intro to my Pando's eyeshadows, you know that I pulled this shade into that product, so that is why I wanted to focus in on this one next, just because I'm going to use this one anyways. Okay, so that was everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to give this a thumbs up and subscribe if you liked it, because that really helps me a lot, because I have another series on my channel where I do sort of tutorials on eyeshadow looks, and those don't get as much views as some of my other videos do, but they get a lot more likes, so I know that a bigger percentage of those that watch them really like them and want me to continue, so that really helps me a lot. Okay, so that was everything for this video. Hopefully you liked it, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. If you haven't seen my introduction to my Pando's eyeshadows, I will, as I said, have that listed in the description box, and I will also leave my snoops. If you haven't seen that, that is an app where you can make like shelves, and then you can put sort of pictures into those shelves with sort of items, and I have a shelf that is called Colourpop All I Magic, where I put all the photos of looks I've done with that palette, and now I will create one for Colourpop Dream Street. So if you have that palette and you want to get some like inspiration for that palette, you can just go and check out my snips. I will have it linked in the description box. And I will also have my Instagrams listed if you want to connect with me on Instagram. And yeah, as I said, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!